We use the word tape. Tape was a substance used to record things long ago. For people who don't know.
I am so going long with this one, Veronica. I'm so sorry. Okay, here we go. Adventurer, global speaker, explorer, founder of Impossible to Possible, and I am just getting started on ultra-distance runners Ray Zahab's resume. So once a pack-a-day smoker, Ray has actually set on expeditions crossing both the Sahara and the South Pole by foot. His story is beyond incredible, and I am so excited to have him as we head into the next episode of Living Your Life with Leanne Lang, the podcast brought to you by Extension Marketing. And of course, for more information, you can always head to extensionmarketing.com. Ray, I'm I'm giddy.
I'm stoked. I'm living your life with Leanne Lang. Like, if you said that 10 times, there's a lot of L's.
Yes.
It's a lot of L's.
Do you know my nickname was like L squared for the longest time?
No.
It was just easier. I know.
That's a great, you know what? No. That reminds me of, do you remember that band? If you're into alternative, I'm 50. So Lollapalooza at La Ronde, and it was L7. Do you remember that band, L7? Do you remember them? They were amazing.
Veronica's like going through the glass, looking over, totally. Going like, oh my God, totally.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. It's an honor to be here because I've been watching you on TV forever. Right?
Yeah, it was a long time.
So
yeah,
here we are.
And we go back. Like I remember doing interviews. I think even when you had really first started doing all of this. And then I'm thinking as I was trying to book you in, I'm like, what are the chances that you're not on some 100-day expedition in some foreign place in the world that I was actually going to have you at home in Chelsea? And the timing just worked.
Everybody thinks that I'm gone 365 in some jungle or desert in some part of the world. Honestly, it's crazy frantic for 40 days on expedition. And then the rest of the year, it's like training, it's family, it's everything else. So it's everything kind of happens at once. And so I don't leave again until mid-February.
I know. I was like beyond stoked.
Yeah.
But that is that realization for so long. I've just when I follow you and I just feel like you're constantly somewhere. But there's also the promotion of what you're doing and what you're training for. So maybe it just kind of was that sense.
Well, exactly. And it's not only that. I mean, doing what I do, you got to make a living. People are always like, well, how do you make money? And it's a great question. I mean, because I spend a lot of my time volunteering with my own organization, Impossible to Possible, which I know you're going to ask me about. But my year is kind of split up between that volunteer time, organizing youth-based initiatives, etc. When I'm in school speaking, I'm not charging. This is all volunteer time, and that all takes time. So the rest of my time, I'm like scrambling to try and make a living. So I do a lot of speaking and stuff, mostly corporate stuff. And there's a lot of travel that's involved with that as well. And I'll tell you what, that's exciting too, because I get to meet people that I otherwise wouldn't. I get to engage with people, share stories.
You're so personable. Like you just like you're so engaged, and I think people are they're so drawn to just that you are engaged and that you're passionate and that you have so much to say. And I don't think this would have been something you would have thought you would be doing.
No, for sure
you just
not.
mentioned like you were 50, and that definitely wasn't the case. Kind of. Backtrack 30 years that you're like, I'm going to be this.
No, exactly. And so it's funny. I come in here and I'm joking with you guys. I'm saying I'm 50. I'm going to turn 50 in a few months. But what I've done, my buddies and I were talking about this the other day, is I'm embracing it early. Do you know what I'm saying? So like I'm in there. My head is in the 50 game. So now it's like, what am I doing for the next 20? And so I'm already sort of, that's where my head goes. Like I'm thinking about what's ahead of me, not what's behind me. I've ran 14,000 kilometers in deserts alone, not including Arctic projects and unsupported projects. That's a lot of time on your feet, but it feels like every expedition that I go on, the next one, I'm just starting.
Well, and I know that I read one of the articles or one of the blogs that you had written about needing the purpose of having, once you accomplish something, having something planned to look forward to, either in the short term or in the long term. So I can see that your head is already there. But do you mind taking me back?
Of course.
Can you go back just a little bit?
I can't remember anything past last week. My kids remind me of that all the time. But anyway, yes, let's go.
And your kids, you have 10 and a 7-year-old?
10 and 7.
Okay.
Amazing runners, skiers, they do it all.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They just rock.
Did you grow up like that? That you were growing up doing it all?
No, my brother and I, we grew up in West Carleton. Mm-hmm. And we had a farm. We had like a hobby farm, my parents did. And so, you're running around. If you wanted to see your neighbors and hang out with the kids, it wasn't like nowadays. There wasn't even answering machines. I mean, if somebody had an answering machine, they were fancy stuff, right? So your parents had to catch the other parents, like when they were home, and say, hey, can, Ray and John go over and play? And then we had to cross a field, a hay field, 25 acres to get to the neighbors to hang out. And so I think it was generally an active lifestyle. Like, in retrospect.
You weren't sedentary as a kid.
It wasn't as a
moving.
young kid, no. In my teens, I became sedentary, I would say, as I began smoking and drinking and doing all the things that a lot of us did do. It's just that I take everything to excess. So that's just the way.
In everything that you do,
yeah,
you go to the extreme.
Yeah, for sure.
So you were a really good smoker and drinker then.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I love smoking and drinking and all forms of things that you can put in your body. I loved it.
Were you abusing your body? Like when you were doing that as a teen and into the early 20s, I'm assuming, like were you still running the fields to the neighbor's house to go do that?
No,
or were you really just kind of, you got
this was
lazy?
like in the late teens, right? So, late high school years, I guess you would say, going into, college, of which I, dropped out. But, in retrospect, you can look at it when you're living it in the time. It just feels like you're partying a lot. That's all. It doesn't really feel. I honestly,
did you have purpose? Like what?
No, there
what
was
were you
that.
doing?
I think that was the one difference because I've had this conversation with so many people, and I say, yeah, I was a pack-a-day smoker. Like that's what it ended up being. But there's a lot of friends of mine that were pack-a-day smokers. There was a lot of people that I think that where maybe the difference was when I was sort of sailing into my late 20s. And I really was still doing nothing. Like I wasn't really doing anything of significance that I felt was purposeful. And without sounding over dramatic about the whole thing, seeing other people have careers, steady paychecks, starting families, into our early 30s. And I was thinking, man, I'm really not doing any of those things right now. And
what were you doing?
Well, we grew up riding horses. I was training horses. I was in Texas for a bit doing that. I was just bouncing around. I wasn't really.
There was no purpose.
There was no real identity or solid thing that I looked forward to doing or passion or any of that. And I'll tell you, we all make choices. Like there's no. In the time, I probably was feeling sorry for myself. Who knows, right? But when you go through a challenge in your life or difficult periods or whatever, it's very relative to someone as an individual. So if you ask somebody how they felt in that moment, they felt worse than anybody could have ever felt ever, because it's your personal experience. You can't compare yourself to anyone else. So every person, regardless of background or anything, goes through challenges in their lives and rough periods. And it's how you digest it and it's how you feel that's relevant. Everything else is irrelevant in the moment. It's your own personal experience. And all I knew is that when I finally came to this conclusion and reality that if I wanted to feel better about myself and I wanted to find happiness, it wasn't going to come from outside. It wasn't going to come from getting a lot of money or doing so. I mean, nobody else was going to be able to make me feel better but myself. For myself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That takes for so many, that is so much effort for a lot of people to even get to that point.
Maybe. I think it's in all of us though. I think we underestimate. I think people underestimate themselves. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I talk a lot. If I cut too much, just coming out. But people underestimate what is in them. There was this company I was sponsored by for a long time, supplement company, and they had a photo of me on one of these crazy fat bikes. It's minus 60. I'm riding through the Arctic, and I have all these bags hanging off my bike. I was unsupported. And the quote they used was something like, "You already have everything you need to succeed." And so I believe that about people. I think that when we really are honest with ourselves, right? When you can really look in the mirror and say, I'm just like, I'm not happy. I'm not happy, and I don't like the direction that things are going. If you could take an introspective, if you're in that point, maybe you're totally stoked on how things are going. So done. You don't need to change anything. But for where I was, it was being honest with myself and having that conversation with myself that I wanted a change. I wanted to do something. I just didn't know what it was going to be. I just had no idea what would give me happiness or where I would find passion or where I would find the things that I thought I needed. I didn't know where I was going to find it. I'm lucky I have my brother, John, my younger brother, who had gone through this life transformation. He was this guy in high school that was same as me, smoking, drinking, not in great shape. And he becomes this Ironman triathlete, and he becomes this mountain biker and rock climber. And yeah, he had a job that perhaps he wasn't happy with at the time, but he was making a bit of money. He had independence. He was himself, and I could see this confidence and passion that was growing in him from the things he was doing. And I thought, wow, I mean, that's inspiring. So it doesn't need to be like seeing Beyonce on stage to be inspirational, although that's inspirational. It's relative again. And I knew this person, and it was tangible. He's been around me my entire life, and I'm seeing this person in such a cosmic shift. And I thought, wow, if I could do even a little bit what he does, I think my life would be different. And that's what precipitated everything. That's why I'm here talking to you today, because of my brother, I would say.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
I did not know that. Oh. No, I didn't. And it's interesting because we had Sarah, your brother's wife, Sarah Zahab, in a couple months ago.
Sarah.
Yeah, totally.
and
she speaks incredibly highly of you. She's like, you've got to get Ray in. I'm like, I know, but I didn't know. I didn't know that was the trigger. So you see this transformation of an individual so close to you. How do you then begin the process?
Then I knew that I was going to do the things he does, and he made it achievable for me. So going out on a mountain bike with him, me taking my mountain bike and having to push it because it was too hard for me to ride, climbing, and he was in control of the ropes and I was terrified, all of these things. But the one thing, and this is where I go back to, it's very relative to us as individuals. Quitting smoking for me was very difficult to do. And I've given presentations, hundreds of presentations over the years. And there's always somebody that says to me, big deal. So I quit smoking in like a day, dude. Well, it took me 3 years. And I always remind them, yeah, but you know what? What's hard for me may be very easy for you. And I loved smoking. But I also knew that it was sort of the symbol of everything that was negative in my life. And so unhealthy, especially with everything that we know. And I thought, if I can give this up and control this thing that is so negative, that I am so in love with doing, it seems, if I can control this, then I can make all the other changes that I need to in my life. And that would take 3 years to make that happen. So that, like New Year's Eve 2000, that was the big change. And when I made that change, then everything excelled. My life changed 180 degrees. And I believe in karma. I believe in the energy that you put out there. If you're not looking for that return on it, it's gonna reciprocate in some way. And because I was so truly trying to improve my quality of life and treat my body better and live in a more positive direction, I think that I started to excel in these cardiovascular things. I became a really good mountain biker, competitive mountain biker.
Like, I think of what your lungs went through.
Yeah, tell me about it.
And then the fascinating part, that how the body is able to rid itself and heal itself, and to be able to provide you with this lung capacity that's going to allow you to run these
obviously, my brother's an amazing athlete. Genetics play a bit of a role in our ability to do the things that we do. I know that for a fact as a runner, but I wasn't a runner in those days because John and I are very physically different people. He's very tall. And so I did not see myself as a runner. I was a great mountain biker and a good climber. So I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And I was passionate about it. I went from cross-country mountain bike racing to 24-hour solo mountain bike racing. I was like racing mountain bikes and doing adventure races and all this crazy stuff within 3 years of quitting smoking. I mean, it was insane, but it was when I read an article about ultramarathons in a magazine that I was so taken by seemingly average, normal, everyday people that looked like me were doing things that were so extraordinary, like running in races that were multiple marathons back to back, that I was compelled to want to try, not for any other reason than to see. I knew I was convinced I couldn't finish an ultramarathon, even though I was a great mountain biker and I had great cardiovascular endurance. This is 2003 going into 2004. But those people that were doing these things We're not doing them, obviously, because it felt good. Didn't make any sense to me. How could that possibly feel good? But they had to be learning something significant about themselves through going through a process.
Right.
So I wanted to know what that was that these people knew. So that's why I did my very first ultramarathon, which incidentally...
how many marathons had you?
None. Zero. I had
You
never
had never done a marathon
No,
prior to doing an ultra?
No, I did. Okay. I did tons of adventure racing.
Okay.
So you could be... navigating through the bush.
I've done an adventure race.
You know what they're like, but you're not really in those days. I mean, at least
I barely survived.
Yeah, in those adventure races, I mean, it was more about the sleep deprivation and stringing together the multiple sports. But we weren't running, but we would trek. I mean, I think we trekked 50K one time. But trekking is different. I'd done tons of trekking trips with my brother, and stuff like that, leading up to the first ultramarathon. But never had I done sequential kilometers back to back. I'd never done a running race, period. And the first race I did was 100 miles, 160K in the Yukon, and I won it against all odds, against me even thinking I'd get to the finish line. It's a much longer story, but suffice to say, I went through so many epiphanies during that race, like you would not believe.
Can I just almost out of body?
Yeah, I would say.
I would think, and especially when you're running the Sahara and the stuff, you are an in and out of body experience for
that's
a majority
a different,
of it. I would
yes,
think.
You know what it is in the Yukon, this is what happened. About the halfway point, I was about to give up because I was crawling, right?
Is it you're in excruciating pain?
Pain,
You can't
it's
feel your
cold.
feet, the blisters. What
no
is
blisters,
it?
but pain, cold, and I'm in the middle of the Yukon. There's only 45 people in this race, or however many, I can't remember. And so nobody's together. So you don't even, and you're in the middle of the woods. It's the middle of the night. I mean, I was terrified. I mean, I had no idea. So it was the longest I'd been in a situation sort of like that at that time. And
this is what year?
2004.
So
February 2004.
and it's still not, I think ultra distance, ultra marathons are a little bit more popular now than they would have been.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
No one knew this was going on. The world is going on like everyday life, and there's 45 of you up in the Yukon.
But you know what? You're making my point for me. And that's exactly what it is. You see, so this race was a well-known race. But I am in this race as an unknown. And I'm doing this, and I get to this halfway point where I'm about to give up. Seriously give up. And all I could think about was all the people that I said I was going to do this race to. Buddies of mine that both I'd grown up with, and ones that I were new friends that had come to know me through the sports that I was doing. And a lot of them said, dude, it's a bad idea, man. I mean, seriously, you've never ran in a race. I know you're in good shape, you're a mountain biker, but it's not the same thing. Running an ultramarathon is not the same thing, but I couldn't reconcile that, right? And now I'm out there thinking, oh my God, I got to drop out of this race. What am I going to tell all these people? And honestly, that's when I had the biggest epiphany. And it was that nobody gives a damn. Honestly, it was about me being there. It was my choice to go there. People are at home. It's the middle of the night. They're asleep. They're living their own lives. Whether I finish this race or not has no consequence on their lives. I'm sure they'll care for a day or two. Oh yeah, bummer you had to give up. I took every penny I had to go and do this race. It's not going to impact them in a negative way as it will me. And so I realized in that moment that I spent the first 30 years of my life talking myself out of doing stuff. When things got really hard, I would find an excuse to back away. If it was a challenge that seemed, far-reaching, or I'd really have to go for, I would find an excuse not to do it because I would predict a negative outcome. It wasn't going to happen for me. It wasn't going to work out. So I'm in this moment. Things are really hard. I cannot see myself going any further. And all I'm worried about is what people are going to think when I go home and I say, oh, I had to give up. And I thought, no, I'm done doing this. I'm not doing this. It just was total clarity. I had no money left. I had nothing to lose. And so I thought, I'm just going to go a little further. This is it.
Let's just go a little further now. Yeah.
And so I basically shone my headlamp on the next tree that I could see, and I started making my way towards that tree, and then the next one, and the next one. And before you knew it, I went into this crazy zone. You see athletes, you hear about this. And the only way I can describe it, the best way I can describe it, this subconscious sort of existence that you just mentioned a little while ago, is like when you're reading a book that you're totally into. And you look up at the clock, you look down again, 2 hours have evaporated because you're so into the book, right? that's basically what happened to me when I was out there. And one thing leads to another. And I mean, eventually I reached the finish line. It felt like minutes. It was 15 more hours or whatever it was. And I had no pain. There was, when I reached that finish line, I had no pain in my body. I wasn't feeling the cold anymore. I felt like $1,000,000. And we underestimate ourselves.
Had you realized that you were passing people or
No.
were you...
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. In this race, because people are so spread out, right? There was a couple of checkpoints along the way where you could stop. And I remember going into one of those checkpoints. There was a bunch of people around, but I wasn't paying attention to who was around. People were refilling their water. Like it was like every 50K or whatever. And then managing their gear. And then there was two more people I saw on the side of the trail camped out in bivy sacks. And I thought one of them was kind of off the trail. I thought, oh, maybe there's more people off the trail. I just didn't give a shit about passing anybody. I didn't care. I was so focused. I became so focused on what I was doing that I had tunnel vision on that trail. I couldn't see anything else. But the trail, I can't just, it's very hard for me to put it in words. Mm-hmm. But it's something in the years since that have become autopilot for me. I get into this zone. Hey, listen, after that race, so I win that race, right? I could not believe that, but it taught me that we underestimate ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally. People can do a lot more than they think they can, but I was still kind of freaked out by the whole deal because I was like, I have no idea how I did this, but I'm digging the way I feel. Like,
were you on a high?
Oh yeah, totally, okay. Totally. I mean, immediately when the race was over, all the pain came back into my body. I was frozen. Yeah. But in the moment, I don't know if it was adrenaline, what it was, but my body and my brain went somewhere else. And I understood in that moment all the stuff I've read over the years about athletes that talk about this. I'm like, oh, you know what? It kind of makes sense. But there's no reason we can't do this or feel this good every day, when we're doing, like, I've spoken to entrepreneurs or politicians or people that excel at what they do, and they kind of get the same vibe. Like they are so after what they're going after, and it can be anything. A chef, like it's like or an artist. They're in this kind of like high of the moment, and there's a focus, and you almost can't remember what just happened. But
you're constantly searching to feel it again.
So I started competing in ultramarathons all over the world on that note, trying to figure out how did I do this? Jar it up.
Right. But can I go back to a bit of that addictive personality that you found that in the smoking and in the drinking and then almost like that feeling that you got, it's addictive. Like you wanted to feel that high.
Yeah, I wanted to feel that. Well, I think it's this.
This podcast is brought to you by Extension Marketing. They are a new breed of marketing agency that acts as your virtual marketing department, designing and implementing cost-effective marketing strategies that will grow your business. I can speak to this personally, as I've been using the Extension Marketing team to help me launch and grow my business. Founder Pat Whalen has been a lifesaver for me, a genuine coach, guiding me along the way into uncharted territory. Tell them you're a friend of the show and receive a free 1-hour consultation. Check them out at extensionmarketing.com.
I remember going back in time that not only was smoking one of the hardest things that I had to change in my life, but it was becoming happy. And I learned, being completely honest with myself, that being negative and being unhappy in life is a lot easier than being happy. Looking at the dark side of things or the gray side of things is a lot easier to do because there's a lot of negative energy out there, right? And even though outwardly, throughout my first 30 years, I appeared to be this happy-go-lucky guy, not much different than perhaps what you're sensing from me now. Jacked up all the time. But inside, I was not at all. I was lack of confidence, unmotivated, unhappy, looking at always the glass as half empty, And I remember I don't know if it was some Anthony Robbins thing I saw on TV or a book I read, or an article, but I remembered somebody saying some point, you have to work at being happy if you really want to be happy. If you've never been happy, how are you supposed to be happy, right? And so I remember that I was at a gas station somewhere and I was pumping gas into my car, the $3 that I had, so it didn't take very long. And I remember looking across at the gas pumps and there was like this other guys pumping gas into his car and our eyes briefly met in a really uncomfortable sort of like we were gazing. And I remembered, I just smiled at the guy. And then he smiled back. And it made me feel good. And I remember thinking, so that's like a tiny, and it made my day better, right? And that little bit of positive energy, I thought, well, that's interesting, So instead of like driving down the road and being angry at every single person that's on the road around me, instead of just saying, you know what, whatever, we're in traffic now and let that person in. And you know what, I just started to take a different approach to things. And I think after the Yukon and going forward through running, which running, I always say, became my greatest teacher, it taught me that the more you practice these things and the more you implement things in life, the more they become natural. And after a while, when you open yourself up, I'm going to use a corny term, you open yourself up to the universe, right? Into what you're capable of and the things you can do, that positivity, you start to see it more and it affects you. And once you become a kind of person who sees the glass as half full and you become an optimist instead of a pessimist, let's say, you kind of just, it becomes addictive. That positive energy becomes addictive and you want to feel it more. And then it becomes very natural. And then you look back at the way you used to think about things and you go, wow, I just can't believe I ever thought that way about simple things. Hey, everybody has bad days. I still have multiple bad days. But I'm talking like, instead of it being 51-49 unhappy, it's 51-49 happy, right? And that changes everything. It changes your whole perspective on life and what you're capable of doing.
Like I had like a smile just listening to you. It's like you shift and then as you're talking, it's like, okay, like you're personalizing, right? As you're saying these things, I'm like, what am I doing? What have I done? Am I thinking negatively? Am I looking at things positive? It's such the opening yourself up to the universe. I mean, there are so many books, every self-help, there is truth to it.
Yeah, here's the thing about all the books and stuff too, that I think that we search and we search and this is my personal experience.
Yep.
There's a lot of guides out there, whatever, right? But we search and it's in every single one of us already. All these things exist in a person. If any one of your listeners that are listening right now that are feeling funky and sort of out of sorts, it's in that person, right? It's already there. It's just you got to find a way to get to it, And I think it's a very natural thing. I think we all have. I am a firm believer. People think it's a line. I believe people are capable of extraordinary things. When we reach the edge of the Sahara, 7,500 K of running, 111 days. I did the calculations when I was out there. I ran further in the Sahara than the amount of time that I spent on my feet to that point. And still, I made it to the edge of the Red Sea with these other two ultra running legends, right? I ran every step of the way with these guys. And yeah, okay, in the 2 years previous or 3 years previous, I was a competitive ultra runner. I went from a guy who didn't run to winning ultra marathons. So for sure, I've got it in me to run long distances. But it doesn't negate the fact that 7 years or so before that day, I'm still smoking a pack a day of cigarettes and fairly sedentary. I started running 4 years before I reached the edge of the Red Sea, something like that. I mean, not a long time. No. And I ran across the whole Sahara. Not easy conditions, I can promise you, through sand and heat and sandstorms.
Okay, I was able to watch, and I hope people take the opportunity. Like the Running the Sahara, like this film, I was watching as many clips as I could kind of steal from it. Executive produced and narrated by Matt Damon. Mm-hmm. It was funny. Like I Googled you and then all of a sudden here pops up you and Matt Damon and I'm like, this guy's talked to everybody. He's talked to Oprah. Well, it's fascinating, but there was so much in that film because you've got relationships. Like that wasn't just you. There's relationships and people, and each of you at certain points are reaching your limits. There's the government. There's the issue of the population and what's going on. That was waking up to the water issues as well, which became, I think, a big, massive part of everything. But it was so much more than just running.
You know what? I think the biggest thing for me that I took in running the Sahara, and you're right on all those things. There's so many things. I mean, we learned about the water crisis in North Africa. Changed my perspective. I was a kid who in school just really didn't give a shit about school. I just didn't care about school. Am I allowed to say shit on the podcast?
You can say everything.
And so I didn't really care about school. or any of that stuff. That's why I barely got out of high school, you know, and as I said before, I just never completed my studies in college. And I was learning so much about a culture and people, the water crisis. I was learning about economics. I was learning about geography. I was learning about everything on an adventure. Because I was running across the Sahara.
As we're running, you're soaking in so much information,
and it became, and from a personal perspective, acceptance. The reality was this was 111 days, an average of 70 kilometers a day of running without a day off.
Okay,
right?
I want people to put that in perspective. That's like 3 marathons.
No.
Wait,
about a marathon and a half plus, like a day.
1.5 marathons plus a day.
Yeah.
In conditions that are...
It was intense heat, sandstorms. I mean, it got really bad out there sometimes. In the movie, we were in the sand dunes for weeks, running through sand dunes, nothing but sand dunes for weeks. So, I mean, it was for sure very difficult. But
like, okay, so can I ask you, like, I have 1,000 questions, right? Like, are your feet burning? Like, you're running...
Yeah, I've been in hotter places. I crossed Death Valley off-road in the middle of summer in 2011. I mean, the ground temperatures were 145, 150 degrees Fahrenheit.
Every time your foot is...
It was hot enough in Death Valley because we were off-road on these salt flats and rocks, 250K, that it melted eventually the bottom of my shoe. Like, the rubber was just peeling off because it was too hot for the bottom of the shoes, destroyed the shoes there. Atacama Desert in 2011, I ran in the summer. The Atacama is the driest place on Earth, one of the driest places on Earth, from the Peruvian border to Copiapó in Chile. It was 55 degrees Celsius some days. The heat was so intense, and there's like, you know, a giant hole in the ozone layer or whatever, right? So the UV, I had to wear long sleeves, long pants. My face was just burning off. There's the SPF 50, nothing. Didn't do a thing out there, you know? Like, it was... So I've been in some really hot places. I've been on both ends of the thermometer. But yeah, the Sahara was hot too, for sure. But the feet, less of an issue. It was more the sand, everywhere sand.
It was everywhere.
Everywhere. Running in shorts that were like sandpaper. That's basically what it was like, you know?
I'm grasping. I'm like soaking this in. I can't, because I don't know. Maybe as an athlete, like, I know how the body hurts. Like, I know the pain that it feels like one step forward on like a sword. Like, it was endless. And it wasn't like you could go to bed or take a bath and take an Epsom salt and be like, I'm going to feel better tomorrow. Tomorrow it's going to be, because tomorrow it was
the
repetitive.
Spa was not
and you did
open.
that for 111 days.
111 days. And like, even worse, like, we only had two showers, real showers, the entire time in 111 days. Can you imagine how funky?
Oh my God, no! You
really
guys
bad.
Really had to be.
But I've been in situations like that. Like, I've, you know, crossing Siberia, or when we went to the South Pole for 30 days, wearing the same long underwear, it never comes off. So gross. You just throw all that stuff out again. So disgusting.
You just toss it. Okay, so we go from this intense heat of the Sahara, of which, just really quickly before we go to the South Pole and the cold, was it interesting to work with, you know, Hollywood, like an A-lister like that? Like
Matt Damon, real deal. I mean, the guy, we were then on the board of the One by One Foundation up to that. And so I would meet him. I'd see him at the Toronto Film Festival in the years following. And just a super nice guy, very genuine. Like, he's not like, I guess, I don't know. I'm not a Hollywood movie star, so I don't know, but he's like a really genuine, honest, down-to-earth guy who does a lot of philanthropic projects that people don't even know about, like the millions and millions of dollars that he's raised for water projects in Africa. It's crazy. I mean, he does a lot of stuff under the radar.
I think that's the best part, and I think that's why there's an appreciation, you know, for individuals like that. And I think I'm very similar to you, right? Like, our lives have crisscrossed people of celebrity status, and the more you're around it, the more you realize how normal they actually can be, and having these discussions with them is really quite enjoyable. But I liked hearing his voice. I liked the fact that he was a part of this project. Okay, so we do the 111 days in the Sahara. What's the thought process as you're in this intense heat to be like, I'm going to go into minus 50?
No, it was, well, you know,
is there that, like,
a big thought process? I go back to this acceptance that it's taught me. It's such a huge thing that, like, when things get really hard and you think there's no way I'm going to make it, you just accept. that if I want to do this, it's going to be 90 more days. 20 days are in. It's going to be 90 more days of the same thing. 90. That's a long time, right? And then you're down to 75 days, and then you're down to 6. And so it's helped me in everything else that I've done. That one thing taught me that running the Sahara, that I can pretty much do anything that I set my mind to if I'm willing to go through the process and accept that it's going to be really hard. Sometimes it's not going to feel good. I can do minus 50. I can do whatever I need to do. And it's not about the temperatures for me. It's about exploration for me. It's authentic. I want it to be real and purposeful for me. So when I'm on expedition, whether it's the Arctic or the South Pole or a desert somewhere, I use the latest technologies to share the expeditions with classrooms, with social media. I push the limits of what I'm able to do. If it's a supported expedition, like running in the Atacama, where I'm seeing my crew every, 20, 40, 50K, and I'm trying to crank out 70K days, then I'll bring shooters. I'll bring a good photographer. I'll bring an amazing videographer. We'll create and compile content, upload it to a website that schools can use, and give all that content to schools for free. If they want it, they can have it. And that's how we try to roll with these trips that I'm doing.
And you did that. I mean, I'm watching stuff that you did for the South Pole. Like that was...
South Pole was a long time ago, for sure. Like 2009.
That's 2000. Okay, so that's 2009. But I know that there was a big process of doing the education
there was
for that one. Like
for
there was,
all of
yeah.
them. There is for all of them. I think that it's in recent years, and the South Pole, difficult expedition for sure. But for me, the Canadian Arctic in the middle of winter, when you're there in February, it's a completely different ball game, because there's the potential of broken ice and there is incredible storms. It gets dark, and when it gets dark, it gets really cold. There's polar bears. There's so much more to the landscape, and the Canadian Arctic is insanely beautiful.
Have you ever felt like you were in a situation like I could die?
Yeah, many times. But I'm a dad. Obviously, I got my kids. Yeah. I want to make sure that I am approaching things as safely as I possibly can. We plan these expeditions for years in advance. So when I go to the grocery store, I just hop in the car and drive to the grocery store. I don't even think about what can happen on the way to the grocery store, get in a car accident, etc. You don't map your route out, So on this expedition or any expedition that I'm doing, I plan every footstep as much as I can. I relive it in my brain over and over again. But occasionally, shit happens. And I've had expeditions. I've done tons of projects in the Arctic. Tons. But bad luck, in 2017, I was scouting ahead on a river system. I was with my teammate Stefano from Italy. And I was scouting ahead. I have the most experience in the Arctic, so we were unsupported in this region of the Arctic. We had these giant pulks, these sleds filled with all our gear. And I left the sleds with Stefano, and we moved one section at a time. I scouted this river, and I was scouting it up and up. And the weather was not consistent. The world is changing. The climate is changing. The weather was not consistent, and it wasn't the minus 50 every day and wind blowing ice that one needed for the month before we got there. It was like, I heard in the days coming, minus 31 day, minus 5 the next, minus 40 day, so the weather was mixed up. So the ice conditions weren't great on this river system. Anyhow, I'm climbing up through these rapids, these frozen rapids, and very small waterfalls, like nothing more than a few meters high. But I'm navigating and negotiating that I would hike back down. Okay, Stefano, pull the gear forward. We pull the gear forward. I do the next section. I was on the last section, about to cross this set of rapids that were frozen. The ice acoustically, when I was on it with my crampons and my poles and I'm testing it, sounded perfect for what I was used to and the experience level that I've had. And we were in a gorge at that point with no shore, if you will. And we had climbed quite a bit of elevation, so the water had tons of current. And I was just about to look back and say, okay, we're clear. Let's haul the gear. And poof, I broke through into that river. And the water and the current it was deeper than I could stand with my feet, and almost pulled me underneath. So it would have pulled me the hundreds of feet that we've climbed behind all these waterfalls to have obviously, my demise. So I, of course, immediately was in shock because I'm in this water and I'm thinking, this can't be real. And what was fascinating about this, and I'm actually writing my third book now, and I'm starting the book with this story because I remember it like it was yesterday. And what I remember the most was I was no more than 3 meters from Stefano when I was checking this last piece. 3 meters. He was against this rock wall where it was safe, and Stefano's a big guy. We purposely were not roped into one another because the ice, if it broke, would have no stability because there was no, it's just, you can imagine this sheet of ice between these 2 rock walls. Lucky we weren't, or the whole thing would have collapsed. But when I went in that water, I immediately thought that he wasn't there, that he was hundreds of meters. That's where my brain went. My brain went, Stefano has no idea that I've fallen in the ice. He's down the waterfalls, and I'm yelling to him, Stefano, I've broken through the ice. He's right behind me. He's like, I'm here. Anyhow, there was this moment of shock where I know well enough after being on multiple trips in the Arctic, multiple expeditions, winter and summer, that when you're in that water, you haven't got much time, and it's
like, I'm thinking you hit that water, like everything just...
It was immediately, but you're in such a massive amount of adrenaline that I'm doing everything I can. So I've broken through, I've created this hole, and it's just my elbows that are propped up, and I can see air. So I had broken through what's called overflow. I won't get into the technical details of it, but suffice to say I broke through 2 layers of ice. So there was this giant air pocket. That's why I thought acoustically the ice was okay. It didn't sound like an air pocket because the ice was thick, that top layer, but nonetheless, weak spot in the ice I broke through. So my elbows are propped up. So I'm seeing the blackness between the water and my elbows, if you can imagine. And so I'm just held up by my elbows right now. And my snowshoes and crampons are pulling me underneath, and I can't get I'm trying to get my boots off and let them go down. I don't care at this point. All I want to do is see my family. And so I don't care if my feet freeze, whatever. Get these boots off so that I can get out of this hole. And I could not get my boots on. My boots were undone, as they always are when I'm on river sections in the Arctic in case something ever happened. But it was my snowshoes that were keeping my boots on. The straps were just a bit too tight. Anyhow, one last effort to try because I knew I had about 2 minutes maximum to get out of this water, I pulled my right leg out. And the shape of the hole, I hyperextended my leg. My hamstring's still to this day injured from it. And my crampon on the side of my snowshoe hooked the side of this, it's kind of hard to describe on the radio, but hooked the side of this hole on a funky angle. And immediately and instinctively, I pushed against it enough that I could get my back up out of the hole. And then I forced my body out and rolled into the snow. And when that happened, it was like a blank in memory. I was just conscious, unconscious, and I'm laughing. I could not believe that I got out of that hole and I lived. Like, I was so in that moment grateful to be alive that I was actually, if we get out of this, the shit has hit the fan, but if we can get out of here alive, I'm going to see my family again. Like, it was like the greatest gift ever. And my friends that know me really well, and I've never told anybody this before, they just, my close circle of friends, there's pre-River Ray and post-River Ray, and things have gone to a completely different level post-River Ray because I have cut the chaff from my life completely. We spent 2 days trekking out from that location where that happened, Stefano and I. I have this emergency, Canada Goose made this emergency down suit for me that it was in my sled. I've dragged it in my sled in the Arctic for years, never used it. I'm so glad I had it in my sled because it saved my life. Threw that on, hiked out of there with boots made out of ice water. I mean, they froze solid to my feet. So I had frostbite on my feet. I was hypothermic, but I was alive, And when we eventually got out of there, Stefano and I talked, and that was the beginning of our expedition. We had 2 other regions of the Canadian Arctic that we were crossing unsupported that winter, and we successfully did them.
What? You didn't come home?
No, I came home in between to get the gear for the next section.
Like,
yes,
are you not on the next plane home?
We went home, resupplied our gear for the next section.
Oh my God.
And then left.
I'm thinking like you're coming home and you're spending a couple days at the Nordic spa and you're not going anywhere.
No. There was like 24-hour turnaround. Just get the skis and the other gear because we couldn't fly.
This is another way of living. Oh my God. Okay.
But this is the thing that's so important that I wanted to share with you. Wasn't that whole story, going in the river. Stefano says to me, because he's Italian, barely speaks any English, and he says to me, Ray, you like swimming in the Arctic? Because every time there's water, and he just assumes that I want to go swimming, but I obviously don't want to. So anyhow, what I took from it, it was like I've had this amazing experience up to this point, 2017 now, like when this happened, 17 years of learning. And it was like a kick in the arse to say you have not figured everything else. You haven't figured everything out. Be humble in your approach to these expeditions. I needed to be safer, plan better, know and be very aware of my strengths. You never stop learning. I've crossed, I told you, 14,000 kilometers of deserts. Some of those alone. I mean, long days of being alone and unsupported for sections before seeing my team in the desert ones. The Arctic expeditions are always unsupported, always. But I haven't learned everything yet, and I'm still learning. And, I came home and I immediately removed any negativity from my life. That experience taught me to really appreciate the people in my life, friendships that are reciprocal, not these fictitious friendships you have where unless you're reaching out to people to say, hey, how are you doing? How's your family? But there's people in your life, they reach out to you when they need something. And it's not that they mean to be that way. It's just the way it is. And you can accept that or you cannot accept that. And it wasn't like animosity or anger or judginess. It was just like, you know what? I got another kick at the can here. Screw this. I'm like closing the group, right? And I let all that go in my life. I let any remaining negative energy that I could, I tried to let it go after that and learn from it and appreciate and spend time more with friends and family, with people that really want to, that dig what I'm about and I dig what they're about, right? And it was liberating in some ways, even though it sounds like a really negative thing.
And I get it.
But I learned a lot from it.
Absolutely. Do you call home and do you say, "Hey, honey, so this happened today," or like what's the call home?
She's like,
she's a very special because she loses you for a couple months out. These expeditions are not overnight business trips.
Let's not forget, this lady just ran 200 miles nonstop in California through the mountains in a race with a lung infection and finished fifth.
You guys are like the incredible. You guys are like the Incredibles.
No, she takes it to a whole new level. She's like silent but deadly. Like I'm the loud one in the family, obviously, but she has. It's very inspiring. I like to go to her races, just to crew her and watch what she does because it's so unbelievable to me. What she pulls off.
How did you guys meet?
She has a real job too, right? And all this stuff.
How did you guys meet? Was it on the running circuit?
No, at a Westboro. Or is this in Ottawa? Can we say Westboro Chiropractic in Ottawa? Dwayne Smith's office. I was helping out doing some core. I was a strength trainer like my brother in those days in 2004, and I was helping out a client with some ball exercises, and she happened to walk into the wrong office, which was the right office in my case. Yeah. And then that was, how it all began.
Oh, that's neat.
But, she took on trail running and ultra running. And then now our daughters are amazing runners. And they have her running technique. Kathy's a very efficient runner.
Do they run with the Lions? Like, are they running in running groups or anything? No, they're just doing...
No, we're just rolling. We want them to do the stuff they want to do at the level they want to do it. Mia, our oldest, is an incredible skate skier. And she's learning biathlon this year. She's a great shot. But if she wants to race, she'll race. If she doesn't want to race, she doesn't have to race. I just want them to be happy and passionate about what they do without any expectations. Like, just go and find something. I don't care what it is. But be passionate about something and try. And that's why, with the foundation, it all sort of comes to this. When I finished running the Sahara, and I was telling you about this before, when our hands went in the water and it was it. Kathy was there, and I said,
was she there to join you at the end?
She was there at the very end, and she said she wanted to know what the first thing was that I thought of when our hands hit the water, and I said it's no limits, and she said, what are you talking about? You? And I said, human potential has no limits. People have no limits to what they're capable of doing if they truly believe that they can. And I said, I'm going to make it I want that to be part of my mission, if that can be a corny thing. Like I want to be able to inspire people through my expeditions to realize that they really can do anything that they set their minds to. And so I started the foundation, Impossible to Possible, the organization, It is 100% no charge, no cost. And what we do is we take young people, 16, 17, 18 years old, on their own expeditions around the world that are learning based. So remember, I was learning in Africa when I was running across the Sahara about the water crisis or about the people and the culture and the landscape. Well, every Impossible to Possible youth expedition is combined with a relevant educational program. So they work together to teach. So you got 5 or 6 youth ambassadors, that's what we call them, and they're running across Tunisia and they're learning about the Sahara Desert. They're creating modules about that. They're talking about the water situation in North Africa in their own way. And thousands of students on the other end of that website are patched into their peers doing something extraordinary and learning from them.
Where are these ambassadors coming from? Like how?
Oh, they come from everywhere. I don't pick them. They come from everywhere.
You don't pick them?
No, I don't personally pick them.
You've got someone, because I would assume that there's, like I either go a handful or hundreds of kids that are wanting to be able to get in on this.
Are you kidding me?
We
put the application up on Facebook for like 2 weeks because we're a nonprofit. I mean, we're all volunteers. Our executive director is paid a pittance. He's the only one, and he's in Los Angeles, and he runs the organization. He does 50 million things. We don't have the bandwidth for the selection.
So would people be going
thousands of people,
applying to get
and
onto this
all
ambassador?
Amazing kids.
That's what I'm saying, right? Is like going through their resumes of what these kids have accomplished or what they're looking to accomplish. You've got the cream of the crop that are even aware of the work that you're doing and that this exists.
They have such massive potential and they're not even aware of it. I remember Brandon Sands came from he's Canadian First Nations from, I forget the name of his community. Anyhow, there's been so many youth ambassadors, and he was such an extraordinary individual. And he completed this run in Bolivia. They crossed the Bolivian Altiplano, him and 4 youth ambassadors. And Brandon is one of the most inspiring youth ambassadors I can remember. And I hear a couple of years later, somebody sent me an email. Hey, did you see Brandon? I said, what's he doing? He's speaking at the Meet a Wee thing in Edmonton. I mean, he's just this amazing guy who became so inspiring in his own way. And we've had 65 youth ambassadors on expeditions around the world. They've all gone on to be inspiring.
Wow. So 65 already. So how many are going out?
We've done 15 youth expeditions. So it's like an average of anywhere between 4 and 6 youth ambassadors on an expedition. But it's expensive to do, and we cover everything. So we do 1 youth expedition a year. It's all we can afford to do.
Is it corporate support? I mean, you
corporate
talk about
support,
okay.
Corporate support.
Impossible to Possible is all the information for people listening or
if they go to my website,
Zahab.com,
there's links.
Yeah.
And to Impossible to Possible, they'll find it. Rather than trying to spell it all out here on the,
No.
So they'll find links to Impossible to Possible. And then, they can follow me on Instagram, Facebook. I have a public page, as does Impossible to Possible. And so my expeditions happen usually in February, March time period. Most of the deserts have been in the Southern Hemisphere. So I try to hit these deserts in the middle of summer. And I try to go to the Arctic in the middle of winter.
Why in the middle of summer?
Because that's when we think of deserts. We think of the heat. We think of...
So you want that?
I want to go in the most sort of authentic time for me. You know what I mean? When I crossed the Atacama, I wanted to cross the Atacama in the middle of summer. Just like Death Valley, just like the Patagonian Desert, just like the Gobi. I crossed the Gobi Desert in the middle of summer.
If you're going to do it, you're going to do it. It's either you're going all in. I remember because I did Kilimanjaro with Sean Dawson in his G Mountains, and he took us in like the middle of winter, like when it was the worst. Like that, he's like, we will probably get into snowstorms, and the summit night was going to be 16 hours in a snowstorm, and it was. And I'm like, and I have other people I've talked to that did it, and they're like, oh, it wasn't cold, like we didn't have that, and I'm like, no, it was like brutal up there.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of grateful that if I was gonna do it and be able to tell the story of being on the snow caps of Kilimanjaro, that we did it when there was
you bring up an interesting thing, and I've had people for years say, when are you gonna do Impossible to Possible for adults? And I'm like, look, you know what, one nonprofit organization is like, it's hard to finding the time to be able to do the things that we're doing with I2P, that's what we call for short, it's tough. So I've started another guiding company. This is for adults, and these are going to be truly authentic expeditions that people will spend a year training for once they register. And more information about that if people stay tuned to my Instagram or my website. We're going to be launching very soon, and we'll be conducting 1, maybe 2 trips a year. They will never be repeated. They happen only once. And it's going to give people an experience like what I do, just like a 10-day slice, you know, to these
Do they
places.
need to be runners? Do they need to...
No, they're going to be incredibly challenging trips. So people will have to spend a year of dedicated training probably, unless you're already doing Ironmans or whatever. I mean, but we'll give them everything they need.
Endurance. You need to have some... Yeah. You'll need to have that endurance mindset.
You're going to have... Yes.
Okay.
I would say.
Because like right now, I am like so close to... I'm like signing up for this. Like right now, I am so there. And I'm like, but without taking the negative thinking away, I'm not in a distance. Like
you don't know because you haven't done it.
Well, I've done a half.
Half's distance.
It killed me. It killed me, and it took. I know.
We'll talk.
I was a gymnast, a non-aerobic sport. But I think it's fascinating. I think you're going to have a lot of people whose minds are going to be spinning right now.
I'm excited.
So you're now in planning mode. Right, because your next expedition, do we know are you allowed to say where it is or what you're doing?
This is going on in January, so I can tell you now because we're just waiting for final logistics. But my goal in February 2019 is to cross the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia, unsupported from coast to coast. So Kamchatka, because I see the look in your eyes right now, you're like, what the hell is he talking about?
I'm like, do I know
So did you ever play Risk when you were a kid?
Yeah.
The board game Risk?
Yeah.
Well, if you got Kamchatka, you ruled the world. It's that chunk of land, if you recall, that hangs off of Russia, kind of like Florida, like that, like a peninsula. Mm-hmm. And it's between Alaska and the Russian mainland in Siberia. If you look at a map, you're going to see it and you're going to be like, oh my God, I totally know what that is. It's that place in the world.
And is this supported? Non-supported?
Unsupported.
Unsupported. Usually you're saying when you're doing the
Arctic or cold weather stuff, unsupported because we have the means to do it unsupported.
You got the sleds I've seen, and on the gears in there. And okay, so and then how long is that one anticipated?
We don't know because it's uncharted territory. It could take us 20 days. It could take us 30 days. Okay.
What do you say to the girls as you're heading out on these trips? Like,
oh well, it's months of preparation. They're talking about it now. They know Daddy's going.
They
now.
know Daddy.
Oh
like
yeah,
like the mindset for them is it's just part of life that Daddy's
Daddy's job,
and Daddy's gone for months at a time.
Yeah, or a month, or a month and a half. I try to. Last year we ran across Namibia. That was 1,800 kilometers. Some of the most difficult kilometers I've ever ran in my life. Anyhow. And I think door to door, we were 45 days, like for the whole expedition. That means set up and tear down at the end.
What's the first thing you do when you come home?
I don't have the, how people say, oh, you must get like the culture shock thing or like the hard to come back to real life. No, I think that's part of the psychological thing that happened. I've done 15 major expeditions, 15 youth expeditions. Over time, my body now, my brain just goes into this automatic expedition ray or home ray. And the minute I get on that plane to go home, it feels like I've been gone a day. I get home. Okay, honey, you want me to take the garbage out? Whatever, I'm down with it. It's that kind of deal. It's back into normal mode.
Fascinating mindset. What item? What novelty? I mean, I have my Starbucks coffee. Or like, is there an item like
that I bring on the expedition?
One that you always have with you, and one that you miss the most? Like what?
Well, I have a ring that's my wedding ring that I bring with me on all expeditions, even though it freezes my hand off. And it's a Tuareg, the nomads of the Sahara. It's a Tuareg ring. It was given to me by someone during running the Sahara, and it's the only one. And so I use it as my wedding ring, symbol of that. And so I'll bring that with me on expedition. I also bring coffee. I mean, I'm not going on expedition. I don't care if this unsupported. Stefano's a coffee drinker. I'm a coffee drinker. We will not sacrifice the coffee for the weight. The coffee we pare down everything. We cut tags off of jackets and stuff to lower the weight, but we bring all the coffee. The coffee is very important. And
you're not boiling water. How are you getting?
Yeah, boiling water.
You're boiling water in the Arctic.
Yeah, for sure. You have to drink.
So right.
What are you gonna? You can't just eat snow.
So you just have all the tools.
Yeah. Bring it all. You bring a stove. It's
okay.
Common
What
do
you
Arctic.
miss? Yeah, I mean,
what do I miss?
Yeah, what do you miss the most?
Oh, my kids and my
okay,
wife.
Like
are you talking about?
I'm talking like let's talk materialistic. Like
materialistic
what? Like
things?
do you crave a food? Is there like?
I crave. You know what? I crave salmon, but I'm craving salmon right now. Talking to you, I could eat salmon like 5 times a day.
So when you're in the middle of desert,
but I'd be like
50
full of mercury and stuff like that. Probably, right? Is that what's in it? Or antibiotics or something?
So you're craving salmon.
Yeah, I crave salmon when I'm away. I do.
Okay.
Isn't that weird? And vegetables. By the end of an expedition, in any part of the world that I go, all you want is a salad. Like the thought of greens.
Yes.
The thought of green food, a cucumber.
Oh.
Anyhow.
That's see, there's so much. I'm getting like the major. I got to wrap this up. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna have you back on when you come home.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
To talk about that. Because I really want to put emphasis. I loved so much the positive thinking of things. Like I am really hoping to walk out of the studio today and work on that shifting mindset. Oh. It's huge. Just being in your presence, you feel it. Like it's infectious.
Well, I think that anybody that's got a lot of passion, you pick that up off of them. Like when somebody's really passionate about something, you can't fake authentic. I've said that so many times. You can't fake it. You either feel it or you don't. And when it's not real. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when you're personally not being real, and there's just something about it, right? And in summary, you have literally one kick at the can. You have one life. There's a lot of people that get a lot less time than we do, right? We all have our own individual experiences and our individual lives to worry about. But the reality is we're here for a finite amount of time. It doesn't go on forever. And so I wake up every day. I woke up this morning. Mm-hmm. I could hear the kids at 5:30 running all over the house. And all I could think of was, thank God I'm up at 5:30 this morning because it's going to give me an extra few hours. Instead of getting up at 6:30, I have this extra hour so the day will last longer so I can do more things because it feels like life is just speeding by. And I want to live every moment because I want to live in appreciation of life, not looking forward just to the weekend. I want every day to be awesome. You know what I mean? And it can be random, doing random things. It doesn't have to be something extraordinary that you're doing every day. It's just existing and realizing that, you've only got so much time in your life.
Yeah.
You got to live it.
But it's believing that you're capable of that. That believing that an individual is capable when you got woken up at 5:30 instead of at 6:30 to appreciate it. Rather than see the neck.
I'm gonna get the cane soon, around the neck thing soon, where you gotta just like pull you off the stage thing. Yes, true. Old Ray would have said, "Oh shite," now I gotta get up. I'm gonna, but that's just not the way I've looked at things for dozens of years now. So it's like autopilot for me. So I'm stoked. I mean, yeah, okay. If we were up late the night before, then I'm gonna be bummed. But in general, 90% of the time, I'm thinking. Okay, good. This is awesome. Let's just Okay,
I'm going to get you back on because I think this was awesome. And I'm trying to soak in as much information. But if in the meantime, there's some TEDx talks, there's books. So where can people find
just
more?
Go to my website.
I think
Zahab.com.
Yeah, the books are there.
You know what? The books. Wait for the next book. Yeah. The next book's going to,
Well, you're talking about starting off with the ice, the fall through the ice.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff. The next book is going to be what's happened. It's good. Just wait for the next book. I don't know how long it's going to take, maybe a year. But go to my website. Yeah. And then there's links to my past expeditions. There's a couple of key videos there. Yeah. Trans-Namibia, the last expedition I did. The videos, there's links to the website for that expedition. There's some amazing content there. People can really get a vibe what it's all about.
Yeah, I loved your vibe. Oh my God, I love it. I really do. I'm walking out of this room a different mindset today.
Perfect.
For sure I am. That was awesome. Okay, so great way to kick off the year. Let me just say it that way. Just a great way to attack 2019. Let's be realistic. If you like the podcast, subscribe, share it. Please let people know that this podcast exists. It's got some amazing stories and to be able to share the message of people living extraordinary lives. That's a wrap of Living Your Life with Leanne Lang Ray. Total pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. That was fun.
Oh my God, I could have gone another hour.
Was great. Yeah, we could have.